And I am doing an evening gaming session because just need to veg out. But I'm also testing out my new setup. So I got like different scenes. I'm using OBS software now instead of just straight up my webcam. So like I can set up scenes and switch between them. I tried it a little bit earlier tonight for the M3 live stream. Didn't really get a chance to try it out all that much, but it's pretty cool. And I know that it's one of those things where I'm gonna have to work on it because my technical expertise on all the live streaming stuff is just not really there. Like I struggle as much as anyone with my my live streaming, so we're technical issues. So tonight I'm going to be playing some Destiny 2. That's my go-to veg out game, and I'm probably going to get into Outriders. I've been warning about doing that forever, but this evening I'm just going to do a little bit of Destiny 2 because it is just my go-to veg out shit. So let me make this full screen so I can see it better. Yeah, there we go. All right. All right. Guess I need to move this way a little bit. So I'm that camera and up here. Get my controller. And I can listen to some tunes or podcasts on my phone, and I should be able to, I don't know if it's going to come through or not. Let me test that out. So I was going to listen to some podcasts anyway. Let me see.
An example of somebody who's just not vaccine hesitant, but is sort of actively against what sounds like almost all vaccine. And this is pseudoscience. There's nothing. There's just no thread of evidence. And so it's funny that she uses the kind of the super sophisticated sounding growing body of evidence. But there's not a growing body of evidence. There's zero evidence that these antibodies might hamper natural immunity. And the way that we know that is these giant studies with thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Half of them got a vaccine, half of them got the saline water placebo, and the ones who got the vaccine had 0 deaths and 0 ICU admissions, and the people who got the saline had many deaths and many ICU admissions. We have very solid scientific evidence that these antibodies protect you.
And that's just for this vaccine. This caller is basically arguing that no vaccine should be administered, that all vaccines are unsafe. This isn't our first vaccine rodeo. We've been going to the vaccine rodeo for more than a century. And basically, do we want polio back? Do we want smallpox back? Because that's what would happen if vaccines, we'd still have polio at the rates we used to. There's still some pockets of polio left in the world. And we'd still have smallpox everywhere if vaccines didn't fucking work. We have these two examples, two prominent examples of the effectiveness of vaccines that just explode this caller's, I'm sorry, caller, bullshit argument.
So, I mean, for all of the wonderful people out there who are doing like the good hard work of listening to people and hearing their concerns and talking to them through their concerns and helping them sort of move through their hesitancy, I would encourage you to, when you hear somebody like this, there's just not a lot of there's no amount of rational sort of conversation is going to help you overcome somebody with such fixed beliefs like this. But luckily, this is a very small proportion of the people who are truly hesitant about the COVID vaccine. And so turn yourself away from spending time talking to people like this and spend lots and lots of time talking to people like the first caller.
I have not tried
some time to kind of think through it and talk through it and understand what their concerns are.
One of the things the first caller was asking us to do is just show a little respect and compassion even for people of differing viewpoints, for people, and the what she set out was people who are getting vaccines vaccinated, are very pro-vaccine, and people who may have reservations. But this is not, a good faith, hesitant, I have some reservations, I want some more reassurance. This is somebody peddling a lie that they may sincerely have convinced themselves is true, but peddling a lie that is going to get people killed. And that is not a viewpoint that we have to show any respect for.
Yeah. So the first caller is somebody who is a vaccine deferrer. So that's a person who is just, waiting to see, every month that goes by with millions and millions of more people getting vaccinated, just because a tiny risk of 1 in a million comes up, that's actually more reassurance. It's more reassurance that just as we suspected, whatever risk there is very, very tiny. And the more millions of people who get vaccinated and the only risks that come up are these very, very tiny 1 in a million vaccine risks, it really does lend more and more reassurance to the people who are just holding back a little. And every month that goes by, they actually can see that more and more people around them are fine, not turning into zombies. This is a safe vaccine. It's an effective vaccine. It's our ticket back to having normal lives again.
And it's not our first safe and effective vaccine. It's a sequel.
It is.
Dan, I just heard your most recent episode, and for the second time in my memory, you said or suggested eating ass to avoid getting COVID. Maybe I've seen different research than you, but the digestive tract seems to be loaded with COVID far more than any other part of the human. You might as well lick the inside of their lungs before you lick their ass. You're giving bad advice. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think you are telling people to do dangerous stuff.
All right, Dr. Barak, sorry we have to go there, but at the beginning of the pandemic, there was some talk, we talked about it on the show, that the virus had been found, the COVID virus, COVID-19, in fecal matter, and then there were some studies that show it was in semen, but then, as we learned more and more, that this was a virus that people contracted by inhaling it, by aspirating it. And the advice became, not my advice to eat ass instead of sucking face. The advice of the New York City Health Department was if you must meet up with somebody for sex, you shouldn't, but if you're going to, avoid kissing, keep your masks on, and if you're going to make out with one end of the GI tract, make out with the bottom end of the GI tract. Is that irrational? Is eating someone's ass akin to licking their lungs?
No, it's not at all. Those are completely different things, and especially different things from the COVID perspective. So, Nat, right, we have so much more experience now with the COVID virus. We know with absolute certainty that this is a respiratory virus, that it enters the body and makes people ill through their respiratory tract and their lungs. And yes, is it possible to find fragments of COVID virus in fecal matter? Yes, but is that how you're going to get COVID? No. But the COVID era does turn safe sex on its head a little bit because it makes kissing like the most risky thing that you can do with a partner, especially a partner who's not vaccinated. I mean, if both people are vaccinated, then all of a sudden it's safe to kiss people again. But if one or both partners are not vaccinated, then kissing is the highest risk activity that you can do to catch COVID.
But it's not high risk because it's swapping bodily fluids. It's not high risk because saliva is being pushed into your mouth. It's high risk because you're breathing in and out of someone else's mouth, and they're breathing in and out of yours while you deep kiss.
Yeah, I mean, just that the COVID virus lives in your nose, and so if you put two noses right next to each other while you're kissing, that's like the highest risk thing you can do. Or because and you're breathing into each other's mouths as you're kissing. I mean, it's kissing is a high risk activity when it comes to COVID.
And when someone is shedding the COVID virus, it's by aspirating it, by exhaling it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not by shitting it. Not that shit is the point of rimming. Not that people eat ass to ingest fecal matter. Hopefully when you're eating ass, there is no fecal matter present and you've gone to some effort to make sure there's no fecal matter present.
Right.
So the risk of being exposed to fecal matter that may have fragments of the virus in it, even if you ingest some of that fecal matter, you're not going to inhale it. It's not going to float into your lungs or into your sinuses.
Yeah. But the way that the other way that the COVID era does put safe sex kind of on its head a little bit is that having oral sex really requires
remove that fragment.
And so if you're going to compare having oral anal or oral penile or oral vaginal sexual activity, then that's going to be higher risk than insertional activity where both people are wearing a mask. And so from a COVID perspective, oral sex is significantly higher risk than insertional sex. And that the safest sex of all is for people to be vaccinated.
Quickly, just in defense of the New York City Health Department, the advice was about harm reduction, not risk elimination.
Yeah.
That, if you were going to remove the mask and do something oral, do it down below. Don't do it up above. There was a greater risk there, of course, if one person doesn't have their mask on.
Yeah.
The danger, though, if both people keep their masks on and they do, vaginal intercourse, is that if you're face to face and you're breathing heavily or the masks slip and you're not vaccinated or your partner isn't vaccinated, that seemed to be riskier than perhaps removing the mask temporarily to eat a little ass before you do something else. How did we get here? How did we get here from vaccine hesitancy all the way to...
But it's the other thing that we've learned so much over the past year is just, it's been surprising how effective masks seem to be. Masks are very, very effective. And so that wearing a mask for the entire time that you're with a partner is a big deal. And whether you're a few inches from their mouth or 3 feet from their mouth because of, you're 69ing or whatever you're doing, the mask is really important. And taking a mask off to do oral sex is riskier than keeping your mask on during sex.
Dr. Brock Gaster, professor of medicine at the University of Washington in Seattle, thank you so much for jumping on the phone. And hey, I should probably take this opportunity once again to apologize to the latex fetishist who called me at the beginning of the pandemic asking if it was safer for him to still get together with his play partners because they all wore gas masks and latex face coverings when they played. And I said no, because at the time, that was when we were still being advised to wash our groceries, to be careful with packages we brought in from the porch. And turns out their hunch was correct. Our erring on the side of caution warnings for people not to do that lest they transmit the virus through touch were too cautious. But hopefully nobody got killed as a result of overcaution at the beginning. We could have used a little bit more of that at the very beginning. Dr. Gaster, thank you so much again.
It's always a pleasure, Dan.
Is it though?
It is.
Hi, Dan. I'm a 42-year-old bisexual woman, married to a man for 10 years. We've been together for 15. We've always been open to swinging and started having sex with women about 4 or 5 years ago. My best friend knew all about this, and about a year after she separated from her husband, she came on to us, and we had some pretty amazing sex. Always at her desire. We were careful to not be pushy or make our friendship all about sex.
Dumb.
And she would just say, let's get a hotel room, and we would have the most wonderful sex all night long. And then when the pandemic hit, she reconciled with her husband. They have 3 children, and she admits this is for the kids, and she loves him, and she needs the partnership and security. It's not a loveless marriage, but it's not a passionate one. She's been confiding in me that they're not fucking. She comes to our house. She sleeps over sometimes when we drink. And she also, throughout this, has been sending my husband sexy, nearly nude photos regularly, which I, of course, don't mind. We still maintain a boundary, but the last time she was over, my husband gave her a ride home with his hand on her thigh. And that was she had been really affectionate to him all night. And when they arrived, she kissed him pretty passionately, like leaned over him, kissed him with tongue pretty intensely. And the sexy photos have gotten more frequent and more nude, and the sexual tension is pretty intense. We are all monogamish, meaning my husband, myself, and her, but her husband is not. She says that they are kind of on a don't ask, don't tell type of arrangement about their social lives in general. I'm not sure if that means any extracurricular sexual activity or not. What is our ethical duty in this situation? We feel something coming on and are both crazy horny over it, but conflicted over where our boundary should be and what our responsibility is to her husband.
No one kinda has a DADT agreement with their spouse. You either have a DADT agreement, don't ask, don't tell agreement, or you don't. And if your friend tells you that she kinda sorta maybe has a DADT arrangement with her husband, where their social lives are concerned in general, what she's telling you is that this isn't a conversation that they've had, or maybe they don't feel it's a conversation that they can risk having. Because if they address this directly, if they stomp through this minefield, it might blow their relationship back up. It might blow the marriage back up. And both may have concluded that it's better to step around this particular minefield than to stomp through it, which would put your friend in the position that many readers and callers of mine have been in the past, and I have signed off on this. Your friend is in the position of needing to do what she needs to do in order to stay married and stay sane, and a person can't do that. A person can't do what they need to do in order to stay married and stay sane without someone to do that with, without someone who'll do them, even if they feel slightly conflicted about doing them because it's cheating, technically. If it's a passionless, sexless marriage, it's possible your friend's husband isn't being cheated out of anything that he wants if he doesn't desire her. But if he does desire her, and it's your friend who doesn't desire her husband, her seeking sex elsewhere, he would feel, if he found out that she was getting sex elsewhere, that he had been cheated out of something that he wanted. And the question for you in the position that you've been put in is, do you want to be a party to that heartbreak, to that humiliation? You don't say that the four of you ever hang out, but if the four of you hang out, if your families get together, and this should come out and he should find out about it, it's not just the infidelity or the betrayal. If he experiences it as an infidelity or betrayal, if he feels like he's been cheated out of something that he wanted, that he'll have to struggle with, but the humiliation of not just that his wife was cheating, but who she was cheating with. That you were smiling at him from across a dinner table, and you knew you were fucking his wife, and his wife knew that she was fucking you, and everybody knew everything except for him. And that can be deeply humiliating. So you can rationalize fucking your friend as helping her do what she needs to do in order to stay married, stay sane, and keep the family together for her kids. You could also, if you don't want to feel morally conflicted, demand that your friend get a specific and explicit DADT agreement from her husband as a condition of fucking her. Not for the first time, fucking her again. It can be difficult to verify whether someone has a DADT agreement. You can't call the spouse and ask, because it's don't ask. That's right there in the name, right there in the initialism. Some have suggested that it is possible, however, with the technology we have at our disposal these days, for a couple that has a DADT agreement to make a short video that both can keep on their phones where they discuss their DADT agreement, and then they can show that to someone or a couple that they're thinking of messing around with to set them at ease about having their partner's consent, even if what their partner is consented to is never knowing, not wanting to know, not wanting to be told. This is obviously a gray area. You can rationalize fucking this woman. You can be pure and insist that you get it in writing before you fuck this woman. What's clear, though, is you are going to fuck this woman if you guys continue to hang out. As the sexual tension grows, eventually that will become irresistible and you will find yourselves all in a hotel room or all in bed again. If you couldn't live with that, if you'll feel terrible in the wake of that, particularly if the husband should ever find out, you need to set a boundary around hanging out with this woman. If you hang out with her, if you continue to hang out with her, you're gonna fuck her. If you don't think you'll feel good after having fucked her because she doesn't have her husband's consent, don't hang out with her, at least for now. All right, before we get to our listeners' response calls, let's read some of our listeners' tweets. Nin Girl Jane tweets, regarding episode 756 and the mom of the kid with the peanut allergy, Dan, you were awfully kind to those grandparents. They sound like narcissistic control freaks who never liked their daughter-in-law, and this is all a power play. If I were her, I wouldn't trust my kids around those grandparents. Jennifer Lubbock tweets, I always love hearing Erica Moen and Matthew Nolan on the Savage Lovecast, and the book recommendation of Let's Talk About It was stellar. After devouring it twice, my 13-year-old son, who does not like to read, said he feels normal. Every kid needs this book. I completely agree, Jennifer. But Let's Talk About It, just to be clear, isn't a book recommendation from Erica Moen and Matthew Nolan. It's a book written and illustrated by Erica and Matt. They're far too modest to recommend their own book, so that falls to me and to Jennifer. Every kid out there does need a copy of Let's Talk About It, The Teen's Guide to Sex, Relationships, and Being Human. And Crystal Lynch Cannon tweets, thank you, Nancy, for making me cry today and for explaining abortion care so well. Nancy did explain that so well, made me cry too. People ask me all the time where I go for advice, and honestly, Nancy is one of the top people I go to for advice. She's an amazing person and an amazing producer, and every day I'm thankful that I get to work with her on this show. All right, if you want me to read your tweet on an upcoming episode of the Savage Lovecast, be sure to include the hashtag Savage Lovecast, and we really appreciate everyone who posts to their social media each week about the show. Thank you all so much. And now, listener response calls.
Hi, Dan. And Nancy, I just want to thank you for your heartfelt response to the woman who was afraid to have an abortion. You just really hit it spot on. And I want to chime in also and say I'm a woman who's in my 50s now. And when I was in my 20s and 30s, I worked for abortion clinics, including Planned Parenthood. And I saw hundreds of women have abortions. And it's a safe medical procedure. When I was in my 40s, I had my own abortion. This was after raising 2 children and feeling great about being a parent. I did not want to have another child. And I just want to let you know that it is possible. I know I'm lucky because I wasn't raised with any shame about sex or about any taboo about abortion, but it is possible to divorce yourself from all of the hand-wringing and drama and bullshit that is placed on women about abortion, about making that decision. It really doesn't have to be any different from making a decision about any other medical procedure that you have in your life that's for your well-being, for your body and your mind and your soul. And I hope that helps.
Hi, Dan. I am calling about this week's episode with a comment for the person who was stressed out about her in-laws and the peanut allergies. What if they did something like give the in-laws a list that they could put on the fridge that, didn't seem like a reminder but could act as a reminder and maybe had things on it like common foods with peanuts that you might not think of or foods that they can eat. Something that could be helpful but also act as a daily reminder when they see that on their refrigerator.
Hi, Dan. I'm calling regarding the caller wanting to arrange a threesome with her husband. I agree entirely with what you said. I would just like to add that the anticipation of a threesome is often half the thrill of it. So I would maybe warn your husband a few days beforehand about what's going to happen so that he has those days to look forward to and fantasize about the evening that's going to unfold. I would also go for the option of meeting downstairs in the bar of the hotel for some drinks beforehand. Again, because both the anticipation but also the thrill of having other people seeing you in the bar and maybe wondering what's going on, and at the same time you knowing what's going on and what's going to happen when you get upstairs.
And we're going to leave it there. Got a question for me about your sex life or your relationship or both, or a comment about something I said on this week's show? There are two ways to get them to us. You can call us at 206-302-2064, or you can use the voice memo app on your phone to record your question or comment and email it to us at voicemail@savagelovecast.com. I'm hosting opening night of Hump.
Okay. Let's see, what do I have to do for this? Well, I got my bow calibration done. That's pretty simple. I still got to do this. Sovereign robes. I need. This will work quite well, actually. So. I guess I just deal with that. Oh, those are. Hey. I am. Where am I? Trying to do some strikes. I was switching from a stasis build to a solar build. So, and I need some legs that will accompany this mod. I don't think that one will. Nope. Let's see. Surprised I don't have any on me that do that. No, that's Dakota armor. Hold fast doesn't do it, does it? No. I have to mass work these, but high in discipline. That's probably going to do it anyway, so. All right. Okay. Let's see. Armaments. Yeah, I should probably use a rocket launcher. Recovery. I have one left. There's like no scavenger or anything I need. A submachine gun? No. Guess I'll use that. Okay, armaments, wisdom. I guess I need might, maybe? Okay. And switch to solar. Okay. Alrighty. I guess I'll do this. Did I finish the... I don't even know how that works. Anyway. Yeah. Yeah, it's been so long since I played this game. It's kind of ridiculous, but. Okay, let me put on some music. Let's see. This is a cool strike. I like this one. I think I might switch to a scout. Oh, I don't have it on me. Fuck. Uh-oh. Okay. Get my Oh yeah, I forgot to switch to a rocket. Damn. Fucking fuck that up. Had to reload. I'm gonna switch this loadout next time though. I do like the sun bracers, but let me see what I got. Okay, let me find the scout rifle. Or this hand cannon, I'll go. Actually seems better. Don't tell me. No, I'm out. Okay, Mary. This is like the worst strike ever, but the best strike ever. But oh, you know what? I still got a fucking machine gun on. Ooh, this would be perfect. Got the Dreaming City rocket launcher with demolitionists. That's perfect. All right, let's go. Do I have elemental ordnance on? Wisdom, reach, wrath. I do not have ordnance on. That's dumb. Okay. Okay. Uh, got bumped off. Oh well. Sweet business. That's funny though. A warlock with sweet business on. Oh, my well went off the side. Let me see. Got the worst strike ever. Let's go. She's gonna kill me. Put third the way to my well, but I wish I could reverse directions faster. Yep, got my well. All right. Let's go. Oh. Goddamn rocks. I do love that email. It's pretty good. What was that? Shotgun. Yeah, I should definitely be using a sniper rifle. Hip fire demolitionist. No. Okay. Let me see where my quest is at. Did 3 of those goddamn strikes and didn't get a single flawless. I'm just not that kid anymore, I guess. I don't know. All right, so I guess it completed. Shit. Okay, let me go back to okay, well, speak with Ava Levante. Kind of just want to do some void strikes. Void Grenadier. See what Ava's saying. Okay. Just like a challenge card. Trials, Nightfalls, Strikes. Yeah, I'm just gonna run strikes. So I kind of just want to do some void strikes though, because the extra stuff was like, a little disappointing. Is Battlegrounds the same? Probably not. I think they switched them out. Battlegrounds has Stasis Singe. All right. Okay. Again, I don't have any gauntlet. Let's see. Okay. Thought I'd never be wearing these, but uh, field prep demolitionist. Okay. Jeez. Okay. Ordnance, wisdom, armaments. This will be light for sure. And another. Oh, how did I get? Ugh, I love it. Ability span. All right. So I got light, armaments, wisdom, ordnance. This one. I guess it'll just be might. I mean, I'm okay with that, even though I'm missing wisdom. No, that's probably the best setup. All right. Grenadier Blackout. Classic. Wow. That's a lot of death. I gotta see what the kill count on that shit was. Holy shit. Just chucking grenades all day. Let me check my bounties. What was it? 179, yeah. Basically double. Yeah, I just killed everything. That's cool. It's a spammy loadout anyway, but take my evening meds here. Guess I'll make this the last one. Okay, so
Greatest Hits Part 3 screening on Saturday, May 1st, where you can watch.
Come from Wise. Get the real mid-market exchange rate every time you send money to 80 countries. Join over 10 million people and businesses and try Wise for free at wise.com/NPR.
There was a time early in the pandemic when you'd hear people say, at least the virus isn't spreading fast in India yet because the population there is so dense. That would be really bad. That is happening now, and it is indeed very bad.
India broke its own record on Friday. It reported 386,000 new coronavirus cases in a day. The number of deaths is considered unreliable, but we know it's a lot. Crematoriums are so overloaded that crews in Delhi are converting a crematorium meant for dogs into one for people.
NPR India correspondent Lauren Freyer is with us this morning from Mumbai. Lauren, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So as we keep saying, the situation in India just keeps getting worse. Just describe to us the problem at this point. How bad is it?
Yeah, I mean, just staggering case numbers, more and more every day, and deaths, almost certainly an undercount because whole towns here have virtually run out of test kits. People are dying at home, unable to get care. We're still seeing severe shortages of ICU beds, medical oxygen, antiviral drugs. Crematoriums are overwhelmed. And social media has become this just flood of desperate pleas. Let me just play you an example. This is a young woman named Lavanya Sharma in Delhi, and she posted this clip of herself on Twitter.
Both my parents are COVID positive and my mother urgently needs a ventilator. No one is there to help me. Please help.
You can hear the desperation in her voice, and strangers come to one another's rescues on social media. Lavanya posted an update afterwards saying she actually got an ambulance for her mom. But it shows the breakdown of the health system here, and that is why the U.S. State Department is now telling Americans to leave India as soon as they can.
India is actually one of the largest producers of COVID-19 vaccines, though, right? So how's their own vaccination campaign going?
Yeah, about 10% of people here have had one dose. Less than 2% of the population have gotten both. Vaccine centers where I am here in Mumbai just shut down today abruptly for lack of supply. Theoretically, tomorrow, eligibility is supposed to open up to anyone over 18, but so many states have already said they don't have vaccines. And this is a big embarrassment for India because, as you said, it's the world's biggest vaccine maker. India had been exporting vaccines. Now it's importing them. The first batch of Russia's Sputnik vaccines is supposed to arrive tomorrow.
So the U.S. and other countries are sending aid in the form of oxygen, PPE, and raw materials to help make vaccines. Is that enough?
I mean, it's a massive relief effort, but the challenge is speeding all of that aid to the neediest patients. And India has supply chain problems. I mean, the tanker trucks haven't been communicating well with the oxygen warehouses, local governments. I mean, people are getting sick everywhere. They're lacking staff and coordination. India is notorious, though, for spending less on public health than most other countries. And so we're seeing the problems. And every morning we hear of dozens of patients dying in hospitals. They manage to get hospital beds, and they're dying because their oxygen is running out there while oxygen is arriving in the airport nearby.
Is the population locked down there, Lauren?
We are. I'm under lockdown here in Mumbai. It's really strict. You're not allowed to even go out for a jog, but it's a state-by-state issue. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi was 10 days ago holding election rallies in parts of the countries that were not under lockdown. Now we're seeing spikes of infections there. The government's reasoning for not imposing a nationwide lockdown is that lockdowns are painful. The economy shrank 24% last spring under lockdown, and so it's really a last resort.
NPR's Lauren Freyer in Mumbai. Thank you, Lauren.
You're welcome.
All right, Israelis were just starting to turn the corner from the coronavirus pandemic, getting back to normal life. And then they awakened today to news of a horrible accident.
Crowds gathered for a Jewish religious festival in northern Israel, and something panicked the crowd. In the stampede, at least 44 people died.
NPR's Daniel Estrin is with us from Jerusalem. Daniel, this happened late last night in Israel. What details can you share at this point?
Well, it happened on an annual Jewish holiday, Lag BaOmer. This is when ultra-Orthodox Jews come in enormous numbers to the tomb of a revered rabbi and mystic from the 2nd century.
Whoa.
This is in the Galilee, in the mountains of northern Israel. So we're talking about a huge complex with stairs and walkways leading to areas where there are big bonfires. Local media are estimating about 100,000 people there last night. And what happened was there were enormous crowds squeezed into one passageway. One eyewitness who spoke from his hospital bed on local television said that around 1 a.m., crowds were pushing into each other, trying to get through. People were getting hot. The floor was getting slippery. And then suddenly dozens of people just collapsed into each other, fell on the ground. And then more people collapsed onto them. He found himself in a pile of people screaming, people reciting a Jewish prayer that's traditionally recited before one's death. This eyewitness said it took a long time for police and paramedics at the site to just untangle the pile of people, and it's being described as Israel's biggest mass casualty civilian disaster, not counting wars.
How was it that so many people were allowed to gather? I mean, I know Israel is doing better on the pandemic front, but still.
Right. I mean, that is the big question being asked here. Big crowds were expected. It's the largest annual public event in Israel, where hundreds of thousands usually attend over the course of a couple days. What happened was that people were not allowed to attend last year because of the pandemic. This year, after the vaccination campaign and the low infections, the event was allowed to happen. It was was going to be the first mass gathering in Israel since the pandemic. But the focus this year was on COVID safety. So police were limiting the number of bonfires, limiting the number of people who could attend each bonfire, figuring out how to get in only the vaccinated or people who took COVID tests. But apparently there was just so much excitement about this event that didn't take place last year. And because the event this year was one day instead of 2 days, that may have been what led to these crowds happening at this more limited event. So there is still a lot of finger pointing this morning. An investigation has been ordered up looking at whether police failed here.
A lot of questions, too, I imagine, from people. I mean, it hasn't happened that long ago, so I imagine people are trying to contact their loved ones.
Yeah, people are looking for answers. And first of all, there have been safety concerns at this big annual event for a long time. But it feels like we're still in this chaotic situation. I mean, overnight, kids at the site were lost, trying to match parents with kids. The cell phone service was not working. This morning, authorities still trying to identify bodies.
NPR's Daniel Estrin reporting from Jerusalem. Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks, Rachel.
There was a pretty remarkable moment on Wednesday night. President Biden entered the House chamber and spoke to the women behind him, making history.
Well, Madam Speaker, Madam Vice President, no president has ever said those words from this podium. No president has ever said those words, and it's about time.
Yeah, the Vice President and Speaker of the House sit behind the President at any joint session of Congress, and this is the first time both of those offices are held by women. Kamala Harris is the first female Vice President, the number 2 of a man who was himself Vice President once upon a time. So what has her role been in these first 100 days?
NPR White House correspondent Aisha Roscoe is with us. Hi, Aisha.
Good morning.
All right, I'm going to quote John Nance Garner, because why not? He was FDR's former Vice President, and he said that the Vice Presidency, quote, wasn't worth a warm bucket of spit. How one does in the job depends a lot on how much space a vice president is given, right? How much space does she have? How is Harris defining her role?
She's really embraced and celebrated the historic nature of her position. Harris and her supporters say she's expanding the view of what normal looks like. But as John Nance Garner said, it is a complicated role because you're not the number 1, you're the number 2. And part of the job for a vice president is to not outshine the president. So Harris hasn't done a lot of attention-grabbing things yet in her job, but Biden and Harris have made clear that they are partners. Here's Harris in an interview with CNN earlier this week.
He and I are in almost every meeting together, have made almost every decision together. I'm not going to talk about our private conversations, of course, but I can tell you that it is often the case that as I will ask his opinion about things, he will ask my opinion.
And the spotlight is much more on Harris than a typical vice president because of her identity, of course, but also because of Biden's age and questions about whether he'll run again.
And of course, not only is Kamala Harris a woman, she's also a person of color. How is she using her role to talk about race?
Her words carry a lot of weight. She obviously has a lived experience, but she hasn't been the White House spokesperson on race. The White House is trying to talk about, weaving equity into every policy and action. I spoke to Glenda Carr, who is president of Higher Heights for America PAC, which is focused on getting progressive Black women elected. She dismissed the idea from some critics that Harris may not be impacting policy. Here's some more of what she had to say.
People are discounting the significance and the leverage and influence she can have being the first and last person in the room to help shape President Biden's thoughts on budget policies and policy innovations.
Carr said she believes that Harris is at her best when she's out meeting with people and that she will be a big asset to the Biden administration when she can do more of that.
I mean, specifically, she's been given a responsibility for a tough problem working with Mexico and the Northern Triangle countries in Central America to talk about migration. How has she managed that?
She's tasked with the root causes of the surge of migration that won't be fixed overnight. The White House has stressed that she's not in charge of the border, but that's a nuanced point that might be difficult to convey to the general public, that she's just over the diplomacy.
All right, NPR White House correspondent Aisha Roscoe with a look at Kamala Harris's first 100 days in office. Thanks, Aisha.
Thank you.
And that is Up First for this Friday, April 30th. I'm Rachel Martin.
And I'm Steve Inskeep. Up First is produced by Nina Kravinsky. Our editors are Kelly Dickens and Mohammed El-Bardisi, and our social strategist is Casey Nunix. Our executive producer is Kenya Young.
Don't forget, Up First will air on Saturday, too. Lulu Garcia-Navarro and Scott Simon have the news you need. It's going to be right here in this feed.
I don't forget.
You never do. No. You should also check out Consider This, though. This is the afternoon daily news podcast from NPR. If you go to their feed now, you'll find an episode all about Biden's massive spending plans and what they say about this particular moment in history. Check out Consider This from NPR News.
A few years ago, a website popped up in Stockton, California, and conspiracy theories started ramping way up.
And it's being funded by conservative movement underneath the table. And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys, people really believe this.
What happens when the local news outlet isn't fact-checking conspiracy theories, maybe encouraging them? Listen now from NPR's Invisibilia podcast.
Support for NPR and the following message come from Sitka Salmon Shares, a community-supported fishery delivering traceable, wild-caught Alaska seafood since 2011. Members receive a monthly share of the catch, responsibly caught by smallboat fishermen and meticulously handled for fresh-from-the-ocean flavor. Meet the fishermen, browse recipes, and shop wild-caught Alaska seafood at sitkasalmonshares.com/NPR.
This Post Reports podcast is sponsored by Facebook.
From the newsroom of The Washington Post.
Washington Post, this is Colby. Hi, it's Stephanie McCrumman.
This is Post Reports. I'm Alexis Diao, in for Martine Powers. It's Thursday, April 29th. Today, what you need to know about going maskless, and another chance at the 2020 Olympics.
There are many situations where fully vaccinated people do not need to wear a mask, particularly if they are outdoors. If you are fully vaccinated and want to attend a small outdoor gathering...
The CDC has said that if you are fully vaccinated, you may now resume a lot of the activities you used to do, especially outdoors.
Lena Sun covers health and science for The Post.
Unmasked. On the CDC website, we have posted examples of numerous outdoor activities that are safe to do without a mask if you are fully vaccinated.
And the reason for those changes is that CDC science has shown that transmission outdoors is really, really low, and the risk to you and your loved ones is really, really low. Therefore, if you are fully vaccinated, and that means you are 2 weeks past your last shot, you can go outside, go for a walk, a bike ride, jog, meet friends for dinner at a restaurant outdoors, gather in small group outdoors with family and friends, and not have to wear a mask. Now, indoors, even if you are fully vaccinated and you decide you're going to go to the grocery store to pick up some stuff, you are still encouraged to wear a mask because there are more people in the grocery store. You don't know what the vaccination status is of your other shoppers.
Well, break that down for me a little bit more, Lena. So if I am fully vaccinated, I can do certain activities outside safely without a mask on. But are there any exceptions to that?
Yes. So you basically want to think about this on a risk scale. There is nothing that is zero risk. And things that are less risky on the low end would be outdoors, walking in the park when there's not very many people around. But even if you're outdoors and you're, let's say, going to a ball game or going to a concert or any place where there are crowds and you're going to be around people for a longer period of time, your risk goes up. And so for that reason, CDC is still recommending that even if you are fully vaccinated, if you're going to a sporting event or a concert or performance in a crowded setting, that you still wear a mask. And you just think about it, it makes sense, right? This is an airborne virus. If you're sitting shoulder to shoulder next to somebody at the ballpark and there are people around you and people are coughing or shouting or whatever, the virus is going to be out there and it's more likely that you will breathe it in and you will be more protected if you're wearing a well-fitted mask. The things to remember are that the risk is based on a couple of factors, right? Indoors, outdoors, size of crowd, how long you're going to be around those people, and how well ventilated those areas are. So that's why indoors is always going to be riskier than outdoors.
But what about if you're having a gathering and some people are halfway vaccinated and some people are fully vaccinated and you're outside maskless having a picnic, for example?
Well, if you're having a picnic with like a whole bunch of people outdoors, that is going to be less risky, right? But because of the size, and you don't know if some of those other people have been vaccinated, they are recommending that you still wear a mask. So what they did was they put out this chart, this infographic that's on their website, and it's color-coded. The green activities are the ones that are safest, but then they break it down. If you're unvaccinated, what do you do? And if you're vaccinated, what do you do in terms of wearing a mask? And there are only a couple activities where you don't have to wear a mask regardless of your vaccination status. And one is going for a walk or biking or jogging outdoors. And I think the second one is dining outdoors at a restaurant.
And did the CDC have anything to say about what activities indoors are perhaps less risky now? I mean, say going to the gym.
Well, going to the gym would not be less risky. Indoors, less risky would be if you're fully vaccinated and I invite you over to my house for dinner and my husband and I are fully vaccinated, we could have a nice dinner without masks. That's safer than me deciding I want to go to the gym, which is indoors, and work out where I will be breathing mostly very heavily. And you might be breathing heavily next to me. And you're in an indoor space, right? Unless the gym is like an outdoor gym, it's indoors and we're all in there huffing and puffing. It's more crowded. It doesn't have as good ventilation. And you're in there for, let's say, an hour. You need to wear a mask. They're recommending that you keep your mask on for gym, going to the movie theater, if you're going into a mall or a store, to keep your mask on. And a lot of it also involves just common sense.
You know, it's interesting, Lena, thinking and talking about these things that, pre-pandemic times used to be normal, like going to a baseball game, for example. It seems like that would be a really fun thing to do, but actually hearing you describe what that would be like with people with their masks down, I'm imagining people eating hot dogs and like yelling, and I'm having a visceral response. Like, I'm just not ready to be in a situation like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, right? Some of the activities that have the highest risk involve, if you're going to be around people shouting, singing, yelling, anything that's going to take all the virus that's in somebody else's mouth and lungs and spewing it out, right? If you're going for a walk in the woods or going on a hike with a friend or two, you're up there, they're back there, you're not breathing the same air. But if you're indoors and you are on the treadmill and somebody else is on the elliptical and everybody's going, and they're not vaccinated, then it's a higher risk. But for some people, especially during the pandemic, it's now been more than a year, it may be very important for them to be able to go to the gym or do these things. That is your own calculation of risk, right? You want to take that risk and you want to do it and you're going to wear a mask and you're going to go for 15 minutes to the gym or, give yourself a time limit. That is a calculated risk that we all take every day. There's no way the CDC is going to say these 12 activities are okay and these 15 are not, because everything is different. If you're a parent and you want to take the kids to the playground and you are fully vaccinated, the kids probably are okay without masks because it's just you guys, right? But you go to a crowded playground, then it's the definition of what is the crowd, or how comfortable do you feel with the other people? Do you know if they're vaccinated? And what if you hear like the kids coughing or, sounding sick? Those are all internal individual calculations that we all need to figure out. These are just guidelines.
Well, I'm curious about how parents are supposed to function, and fully vaccinated parents are supposed to function when their kids obviously don't have the vaccine. What about in dinner parties or in smaller settings? I mean, what's the risk calculation there?
Right. In smaller settings, the CDC has already said that if you're fully vaccinated, you can get together with another household of unvaccinated people indoors safely, as long as there's no one in that household who is at high risk of getting sick. So let's say grandparents are fully vaccinated. They want to go visit their daughter's family, the daughter, the husband, 2 kids, and everybody's healthy. Then you don't need to wear a mask. And the kids don't need to wear a mask. But the grandparents, let's say they go visit the daughter, the husband, the 2 kids, but let's say either the daughter or the husband is having chemotherapy, so they're immunocompromised. Then that person is at higher risk of getting disease. And so it would be better if you wore masks.
Even if they're vaccinated?
Even if they're vaccinated, they need to talk to their doctors. I mean, even if they're vaccinated, their immune systems are just not going to be as strong. You're not going to likely get as strong of a boost to the vaccine. And so for this particular group of people, the CDC advises that you talk to your healthcare provider, even if you're fully vaccinated.
It's interesting because with these new guidelines, there's also this sense of like, it's almost become a social norm to just wear your mask whenever you're outside of your home. I mean, I've gotten used to even like wearing my mask on hikes in the woods, which now seems kind of ridiculous. There's no one else around.
I think that, it would help to make it a social norm instead of making it a political fight. In many other countries, even before the pandemic, that is what they did. And I would note that in many countries in East Asia, it was very easy to get people to understand this because they wore masks in the wintertime anyway to avoid getting the flu or getting a cold. In some countries, the pandemic has taken very, very little impact on death. In Singapore, they have had a total of 30 deaths. That is 30. They've had a total of 30 deaths. And people have been very good about following public health measures, not to go outside without a mask and social distancing. And, it's not like you're being asked to strap some kind of heavy piece of machinery on your back or something, right? It's a piece of cloth, just slip it on.
Lena, I'm curious how you have been calculating your risk, especially with the latest guidelines coming out from the CDC about masks.
Well, I'm fully vaccinated.
Woo!
And I circled the date on the calendar when I was going to be 14 days past my second shot. And I circled it and I drew all these flowers around the calendar. And on that day, I remember going outside for a walk with a friend, and we were both very happy. My friend was almost there. And on the day that CDC announced the new guidance about not having to wear masks outdoors, after I filed my story, I went outside for a walk in the afternoon. On that day, it was particularly warm and sunny. I didn't have my mask on. I walked outside. I just felt really happy and a sense of relief. And I still carry the mask in my pocket because I'm indoors, outdoors. If I was walking in the stairwell and there were construction folks moving furniture, I immediately put my mask back on. You just keep it handy because, you can drive to the store and not have to wear the mask in your car, but you want to have it handy in your pocket to put on when you're going to the grocery store. It's like wearing a seatbelt. I don't really even think about it. I just keep it in my pocket. But when I'm outside and I don't need to wear it for a walk, it's just glorious.
Lena Sun covers health and science for The Post. This story was produced by Lena Mohammed.
It's been 25 years since lawmakers passed comprehensive internet regulations, but the internet has changed a lot since then, and it's time for an update. That's why Facebook supports updated internet regulations to set clear guidelines for addressing today's toughest challenges, like protecting privacy, fighting misinformation, reforming Section 230, and more. See our progress on key issues and what's next at about.fb.com/regulations.
Rick Mace, it is 2021. Are we going to be seeing Olympics 2020 happening this year?
I wish I could tell you a definitive answer to that. What I can tell you is that everyone is planning on it right now, but there are so many fears, so many uncertainties circulating. People are all keeping an eye on the rising COVID numbers in Japan and waiting to see how the local officials there react.
Well, give me a profile of what we do know about the Olympics, assuming that it will go forward. Where is it? When will it be? When will it begin? Things like that.
Yeah, so right now we're less than 3 months away. The opening ceremonies are scheduled for July 23rd. If you're tuning in on TV, you might not notice any difference. You're going to see a lot of the familiar athletes. You're going to see all your favorite sports. It's really on the ground in Tokyo where it might feel and look different. We don't know if there's going to be spectators allowed in the Olympics. We don't know if there's going to be all the pomp and circumstance you usually associate with this giant sports festival that exists only once every 4 years. What we do know is there's going to be a lot of restrictions, a lot of safety protocols in place. Athletes aren't going to show up, go to the opening ceremony, march through the parade. They're going to get to Tokyo. They're going to check into the Olympic Village. They're going to compete in their event, and they're going to board an airplane going home.
So are they currently planning on doing something like what we saw with the NBA and having everybody in a bubble? I mean, how are they planning on pulling this off?
In the past year, we've seen a lot of sporting events around the world that have been successfully staged. The Olympics are just much bigger in scale. There's athletes from more than 200 countries, usually about 11,000 athletes. So we're not going to see a strict bubble that you kind of have seen in some instances. There's still going to be a lot of protocols and safety precautions in place.
Well, like what? I know that they're not going to be requiring COVID vaccinations for athletes, but how are they planning on keeping them safe and healthy and also safe from each other?
On Wednesday, they released an updated playbook for athletes. That's sort of their rule book with restrictions and protocols. And for athletes, it really starts before anyone even boards an airplane. Everyone will have to take at least 2 COVID tests in the days before hitting the airport, and then they'll have to take a third one when they land in Tokyo. And this is also new. While there's no extended quarantine, athletes will be largely confined to their room for the first 3 days in Tokyo. They'll need 3 straight days of negative tests before they can start moving around the Olympic Village a bit more freely. And even then, they'll be tested each day for the virus. So they're not going to be allowed to use public transportation, no restaurants, no bars, more shops. Everyone in the ground at these Olympics is going to have at least 2 smartphone apps. They'll be expected to log in, mark their movements, and it's information that'll be used for contact tracing because the biggest fear is that there'll be some kind of outbreak that impacts not just 1 or 2 athletes, but the entire Olympic Village.
Wow. Okay, so that's intense. And what is the plan if that does happen? Like, what if an athlete actually tests positive for COVID?
Yeah, Olympic officials are still working out a lot of these details, and we're hoping that some will actually be announced and shared with us this week. But what we do know is that if any athlete tests positive with COVID-19, their Olympics will essentially be over. They will not be allowed to compete. They'll be isolated, possibly hospitalized, and somehow they'll be routed back to their home country as soon as possible.
And what's at risk here if the Olympics don't happen this year?
If for some reason these games are canceled and don't take place, you're talking about billions of dollars that have been spent. You're talking about a country that has staked a big chunk of its reputation, not to mention energy and resources, and it's all for naught. There's really going to be nothing to show for it except some infrastructure, some big buildings that were supposed to host events. The Olympics will just kind of pack up their circus and move on to the next town.
And in addition to that, I'd imagine that Olympians who have been working toward this for a really long time aren't going to be able to have their time to shine. And then, of course, if you're an older athlete, that's it.
Right. I mean, the Olympics are all about the athletes, and that's who you really feel for in this. For the most part, Olympic athletes aren't people we pay attention to year-round. They're people we notice once every 4 years. When they postponed the games by a year, it clearly meant that some young athletes, I'm thinking of a 16 or 17-year-old, maybe it's a gymnast or a swimmer, they were going to benefit from that extra year of seasoning and experience. But there's a lot of other athletes on the other side of the spectrum. That extra year was really going to cost them their Olympic eligibility and endanger their chances of winning a medal. And I'm thinking of some familiar names, a swimmer Ryan Lochte, sprinter Allison Felix. They're in their mid-30s. They don't have a lot more years to compete.
But I'm curious, how did the International Olympic Committee actually come to the decision of having the Olympics this year? I mean, we are very much still in the middle of a global pandemic.
Yeah, well, if we think back to last year in those early days, the case numbers weren't high, the death toll wasn't high, but certainly the fear and the concerns were skyrocketing on a day-to-day basis. And I'd say the IOC and the Tokyo Organizing Committee reluctantly decided to postpone the games. The options were really to try to pull it off that summer, which increasingly became less likely, to cancel the games altogether, or to postpone by a year. And I think the decision that everyone thought made the most sense and that kind of allowed athletes to continue working toward their dreams was this year-long postponement.
And what about Japan? So, I mean, if it's being held in Tokyo, do they share the same sentiment as the IOC, that it's going to be now or never? I mean, I just imagine that they've built this Olympic village and then it'll just be a ghost town if it doesn't happen.
We're really seeing a lot of tension that's begun to surface lately. Japan has been very slow to vaccinate its people. Its COVID numbers continue to rise. Tokyo just entered a third state of emergency. You're really seeing public sentiment, which was never particularly high, has really suffered for these Olympics.
And what is the case count actually like there?
So Japan, compared to the United States or a lot of European countries, the cases are actually very low. Right now, they're seeing anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 a day, which compared to the United States seems like a very small number. But for them, this is their largest new caseload they've seen since January. But what we kind of hear whispers of is that
I need to add a little bit of flour to it to get it, or make a little mirepoix before I something. Yeah, I can't get the good Jamaican gravy.
Yeah, I don't use I'll use a bit of like beef broth, but I'll also do a little bit of cornstarch. You can do a mirepoix, but like if you just boil it down, that'll work too. But I also add cassava in mine, which is it's like so it gives like a lot of the starch gets released, so it's also thicken up the sauce.
That's a bad bitch.
Right? Like I add cassava. I know my mom, she used to put what was it she did? She used to make like a plantain dumpling.
Mm, not really sure. Oh, well. All right. I am probably going to take it, call it a night in a little bit. I had a pretty good gaming session. I was going to get on Outriders. Maybe I should just before I go to bed. I'm not really wanting to play more Destiny. Oh yeah, let me give it a shot. I mean, I got the Heir Apparent Catalyst. That's basically the only thing I wanted from that event. So I am literally at no level in this game, like zero. Like I finished the intro to the game and immediately gave up. I am not a gamer. I don't know why I'm doing this. Just I guess, something to do. I don't know. Streaming's kind of interesting. I watch streamers. I guess that's probably why I'm doing it. But I mean, the major thing that they do that I am not doing is I don't know, providing more interesting gameplay. Mine is just going to be bumbling along. But oh, that's what it is. I'm not exactly sure what to do. Okay. A message from Outriders team. Thank you. Outriders. Oh, they got patch notes. Okay, so. Well, I've never even really played it, so I don't know. Anything about what crashed and what didn't? Okay. Probably have to go to World Tier 1 because I suck. And I don't want to have to fucking struggle for this shit. Probably the fastest way to learn would be to jump in with a random team, but let me just start from where I'm at. Select story point. Okay. Yeah, I never did do this. Okay. Confirm story point. Yeah, I have 0 weapons, so I think I got a shotgun or something. But
What the best way to gain knowledge?
Last lecture, we considered the skeptical problem and René Descartes' attempt to find undoubtable truths, things that we can know even if we can't first know that our experience of the world is accurate. We saw Descartes' argument fail to ground our knowledge of the world's existence, but I suggested that we can still know the world exists because it provides the best explanation for our experiences. But even if we ignore all that and simply grant that the world exists, we're still left wondering, just how accurate is our knowledge of the world? Do our beliefs really reflect the way the world is? And what's the best way to go about making sure that they do? What's the best way to gain knowledge? To answer these questions, we need to explore the philosophy of empiricism. Now, Descartes was a rationalist. He thought some beliefs can be justified a priori, justified without or before having any sense experience. Conversely, the empiricist maintains that we can't know anything without sense experience. So not only is it the best way to gain knowledge, it is the only way. The first major empiricist was the British philosopher John Locke, who, in his 1689 book, An Essay Concerning Human Understanding, suggested that we are born tabula rasa, as a blank slate. When we are born, our minds contain no ideas, and we only start to form ideas once we have sense experience. Now, by idea, Locke doesn't just mean a revelation, like, I have an idea, let's go get some Thai food. Although that would count as an idea, for Locke, an idea is anything in the mind: beliefs, sensations, private thoughts, mental talking, etc. According to Locke, we get ideas in two different ways: by sensation, observing the world, and reflection, observing our own mental operations. The former generates simple ideas like heat and solidity, shape and taste. The latter generates ideas of perception, doubting and reasoning. We can combine these ideas to come up with new, unique, complex ideas, but we can't generate new, simple ideas on our own. So ultimately, everything in our mind, according to Locke, traces back to something we learned through our senses. So, Since knowledge is justified true belief and truth is correspondence with the world, if we want to know how accurate our knowledge is, we need to know whether the ideas in our minds correspond to the way the world is. To put it in Lockean terms, we want to know whether the idea in our minds resemble the properties or qualities in objects that produce those ideas. So, for example, my idea of solidity was produced by the first solid object I saw. Did the quality of solidity that that object had actually resemble the idea it produced in my mind? Now, it seems so. The object and my idea share the same property, solidity. Locke called such properties primary qualities and also included among them things like solidity, extension, figure, motion, rest, and number. These are all qualities that objects have regardless of whether they're being perceived, or even whether any minds exist to perceive them at all. But many qualities are...
Hello? Fuck.
Secondary qualities. The ideas they produce are not like the quality itself. Take, for example, your idea of heat. Now, you got it by touching a hot object. But what actually makes an object hot? Well, scientifically speaking, an object is hot when its molecules have high energy, when they're moving around and bouncing off each other at high velocity. The more movement and speed they have, the higher the object's temperature. When you touch a hot object, that motion is transferred to you, to your skin and nerves, which causes an electrical signal to be sent to your brain. Your brain processes that signal and poof, a sensation of heat emerges. Think about this. What does your sensation of heat feel like? What property does it have? Imagine it. Got that sensation in your head? Now ask yourself, does that property of that sensation in any way resemble molecular movement? Does it feel like movement at all? If it weren't for science, would you be able to tell just by touching that a hot object's molecules are moving faster? It seems not, because your idea of heat in no way resembles any quality a hot object has. The only thing that's really hot is your sensation, your idea. The object is not hot. It merely produces a hot sensation in your mind. Or consider color. We see an object as a color because certain wavelengths of light reflect off of it. When those wavelengths hit your eye, it causes your optic nerve to send a signal to your visual cortex, and ultimately you experience a visual sensation of color. But think about what your sensation of, say, red is like when you look at an apple. What properties does that sensation have? Does the wavelength of light have that property? No, it's just spread out or scrunched together in different frequencies. Does the apple itself have that property of color? No. The quality in the apple's skin that causes you to see that color has only to do with, roughly put, its molecules, and the fact that its molecules have, the molecules it has cause the object to absorb and reflect certain wavelengths of light. The only thing that actually has the property of redness is your sensation or idea of red. Nothing in the world is actually red. Nothing in the world is actually a color. Color only exists in your mind. And we could say the same thing about tastes and smells and sounds. None are qualities that objects have when they're not being perceived. They only exist in the mind. So, what does this tell us about the accuracy of our knowledge? Well, Locke would say our knowledge regarding the primary qualities of the world is quite accurate. Our ideas of those qualities resemble the actual qualities in the world themselves. An object we perceive as solid is solid. However, our knowledge regarding the secondary qualities of objects is not accurate. We think the world has color, heat, taste, and smell, but in fact, the world contains no such qualities. Only our minds do. So our knowledge of the world is inaccurate in that the world doesn't look anything like our experience of it. When I think of this, I can't help but think of Dressgate, that stupid online controversy in February of 2015 about whether or not that dress was blue and black or white and gold. Well, what's the right answer? It's neither. It's not any color at all. Color is a property had only by our experiences. And since the light waves the picture of that dress produce are on the borderline, in some people they produce a black and blue experience, and in others they produce a white and gold experience. But it's not like there's some objective fact about what color the dress is. There are only facts about what wavelengths of light the dress reflects and how different people's brains interpret them. The vitriol that controversy produced in people could have been avoided if they would have simply realized that, at least when it comes to secondary qualities like color, we don't actually see the world as it really is. Unfortunately, science has actually banished many of Locke's primary qualities into the realm of secondary qualities. For example, consider his example of solidity. We perceive as solid some objects when in reality they are mostly empty space. In fact, all objects that are solid are mostly empty space. Even the atoms that make them up are mostly empty space. We call objects solid when they won't pass through each other, but solid objects don't pass through each other merely because of the way their atoms interact, but the atoms never actually touch. And if we factor in quantum mechanics, even the particles that make up atoms, like electrons and protons, they're not solid either. They are probabilistic wave functions that take on properties like location and velocity only when they are measured, and even then, they can only take on one such property at a time. So, things are not looking good if we think our knowledge of the world is accurate. But around 1740, another empiricist, David Hume, raised even deeper questions about the accuracy of our knowledge in his book, A Treatise of Human Nature. Hume divides the content of our minds into impressions and thoughts. An impression, which is very vivid, is a sensation that you are having right now. For example, you are having an impression of the sound of my voice. A thought is less vivid, like a memory of an impression. Although you are having an impression of my voice right now, as soon as I stop speaking, you will only have a thought, a memory of what it was like. Well, Hume says our ideas are related in three ways: resemblance, contiguity, shared location in time and space, and cause and effect. If our ideas about two objects in the world resemble each other, then we think the objects in the world resemble each other. If the ideas in our mind are contiguous, close to each other in time and space, then we think the objects that produce those ideas are contiguous. And if we think our ideas are causally related, one causes the other, then we think the objects in the world that produce these ideas also share a causal relation. Now, Hume thinks our knowledge about the relationship between ideas can be accurate, the relationship. For example, I can know exactly how my idea of the number 2 relates to the idea number 1. So, Hume thinks our knowledge of things like geometry and math is on pretty solid ground. But our knowledge of matters of fact, our knowledge about the outside world, is quite subject to doubt. Hume says this is because our reasoning regarding matters of fact is founded largely on conclusions that we have drawn about the causal relationship between things in the world. We gain knowledge of matters of fact through cause and effect. And this seems right. To gain almost every piece of knowledge we have, we rely on some assumption regarding cause and effect. I, for example, think that my legs are causing me to stand upright, and that the floor is causing me not to fall a few stories to my death, that my vocal cords are causing sounds to be produced, that this microphone is causing my voice to be recorded, and so on. But Hume argues our knowledge of causation and causal relationships between objects is on very shaky ground. To know that two things, let's say alpha and beta, are causally related, we need to know that there is a necessary connection between them. That, in other words, in the future, every time alpha occurs, beta will immediately follow it. But we certainly aren't born with such knowledge. Hume's an empiricist, so he doesn't think we are born with any knowledge. And even if he's wrong about that, we definitely are not born with knowledge of necessary connection between objects. Even something as simple as when I slap my hands together, it makes a clapping sound, is learned by experience. And no amount of pre-effect observation can even let you know what that effect will be, much less that the effect will always follow the cause. For example, I could examine these two metallic egg-looking things as much as I want, but until I actually put them together, I will have no idea what sound they will actually make. Ultimately, we have no direct impression that leads to our idea of causation, our notion that two things are necessarily connected. Hume suggests we infer a causal relationship and thus conclude that when one occurs, the other one will always follow when we observe events sharing the following properties: continuity, uninterrupted connection, succession, or union; priority in time, one happens right before the other; and constant conjunction, they always happen together. And it seems that he's right. When we continually see two events in uninterrupted succession, one right after the other, we infer a causal relationship between them. If beta has always happened right after alpha, then we conclude that beta will always happen right after alpha. In other words, that they are causally connected. But we only do this, Hume argues, because of habit or custom, not because of reason. So what we call a cause is not really a cause. It's just an event or object that is so tied in our imagination to another event that we cannot consider one without considering the other. And Hume thought this because meeting those criteria is not enough to guarantee a causal relationship. Take day and night, for example. They exhibit continuity, priority in time, and constant conjunction. Day has always immediately followed night. But day does not cause night, nor does night cause day. The clock on my dresser showing 11 o'clock p.m. is always conjoined with my being tired. But the clock does not cause me to be tired. Recall the causal fallacy we mentioned in a previous lecture. Correlation does not entail causation. It seems that all of our reasoning regarding causation is fallacious. It's based on that fallacy. Simply put, to have knowledge of causation, we would have to have knowledge of the future. To know that every time, past, present, and future, when alpha occurs, beta will occur. But of course, we can't see into the future. For all we know, the next time alpha occurs, beta won't occur. We can't know there is a necessary connection, and thus we cannot infer causation. Since knowledge of causation seems to be what most of our knowledge regarding the world is grounded upon, our ability to have knowledge of the world seems greatly diminished. To solve this problem, one might be tempted to employ some basic inductive reasoning. If I've always seen beta following alpha in the past, I can simply infer that it always will in the future. Fair enough. But Hume points out that while it's true that you could use induction to derive that conclusion, to trust that conclusion, you would have to show that induction is reliable, that the conclusions of strong inductive arguments are usually true. All induction is based upon the presumption that the future will resemble the past, so you would have to show that that assumption is reliable in order to trust that conclusion. Now, we might be tempted to think that we can prove this. So let me give it a try. Every time I clap my hands, it made a sound. Therefore, I infer that the next time I do so, there will be a clapping sound. Success. The future resembled the past. Induction worked. Let's do it again. Good. Good. It worked. The future just resembled the past 3 times. Therefore, I infer that the future will always resemble the past. So induction is reliable. Did you catch the error? Ultimately, what mistake did I make? What am I trying to prove? That induction is reliable. Yet what kind of argument did I just give? An inductive argument. I'm assuming the future will resemble the past to conclude that the future will resemble the past. So I'm just begging the question or arguing in a circle. I'm simply assuming the truth of what I'm trying to prove. But it seems that there's no other way to prove that induction is reliable. So we simply have to assume that induction is reliable. We have to assume that the future will resemble the past.
All right.
But if we assume it,
I think I'm going to call it a
doesn't seem
night.
that we know it, because we can't justify a belief by merely assuming it. So we don't know
It's really
that induction
bad.
is
All
reliable.
right.